What's up, tribe? Nick here from Ottawa, and in today's awareness video, I want to talk about the connection between your hips and your feet. So a lot of people look at the foot as sort of an isolated body part, as an area where if you have foot problems, then it's foot specific and it requires a foot solution. But we often forget that the chief joint, the primary joint responsible for creating a stable arch of the foot, is actually our hip joints. And it doesn't matter what you do to address a problem at the foot. Say you have plantar fasciitis or you've got collapsed arches, flat, quote unquote, flat feet. We're going to do a whole other video on flat feet and sort of dispel a lot of the myths around that. But say you've got an issue at the foot, a lot of times we forget to look upstream at the hip. And the hip is the number one joint that creates the arch of the foot and is the number one area that needs to support and protect the ankle. So if your hips aren't working, but you try and solve a foot problem, it's often not going to go very well. And to make sustainable changes and improvements long term, you have to address both the hip and the foot. If you do that, the two joints in between, the knee and the ankle, stay happy. But without addressing the hip, we often miss out on the big picture at the foot. So the ability to rotate your hip, and this is a really easy demo we do with people, we get people to stand barefoot, hip width apart. Okay, they bend their knees slightly, they look at their arches, and then they push their knees out and then bring their knees in. And by doing that, we get them to observe the arch of their foot. So if my knee comes in, the arch of my foot collapses. If my knee goes out, the arch of my foot reforms. And so what I'm doing here is actively creating torque at my hip, is actively generating external rotation at my hip. That rotation goes down, puts my knee in a good position, and it also aligns the bones of my foot to create a nice bony arch at the foot. Okay, so flat feet oftentimes aren't a foot problem, it's actually a hip problem. Why do we develop hip problems? Well, because we spend all day here, which is sitting in chairs, we don't use a lot of rotation. And when our hips start to not be able to, if you're not using rotation on a daily basis, then your hips lose the ability to rotate. And if you can't rotate your hip, if you can't generate torque at the hip, you cannot lift up the arch of the foot. Okay? So your hips place the foot in a good position. In order to fully restore an optimal arch, an optimal foot position, you need to restore optimal hip rotation. Okay, and we've got videos, tools videos on 90-90, on actively improving your hip rotation. So we'll probably put all these things in a series, in a flat foot series, where if you've got collapsed arches, we'll give you kind of a pathway of how to restore mobility at the hip, how to restore mobility at the foot. Another element with this is even if your hip can generate torque, if the bones of your foot are stuck and aren't mobile, it's going to be really hard to create that arch position as well. Okay, but the big take home from this video is, this hip torque demo really can show people that your hips control the arch of your foot. And if you want to change the arch of your foot and your foot function sustainably for good, you need to also look upstream as to whether or not the hips are doing what they're supposed to. And we'll have other tools videos that let you know how to screen the hips and see if you have enough rotation or if you need to work on your hip rotation. Okay, hopefully that helps, and we'll catch you in the next video.